Greetings, greenhouse people. We're back at it with another episode of Tech on Demand brought to you by the fine folks at Grower Talks magazine. If you don't receive Grower Talks and Green Profit every month, head over to growertalks.com and subscribe. The magazine's been a pillar of the industry for more than 75 years, and it's about time you join the club. And speaking of subscribing, be sure to subscribe to the Tech on Demand podcast on your favorite podcast app, like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, and more. If you have an extra minute to leave us a positive review, that would be awesome. Every little bit helps our algorithms and allows us to reach more greenhouse professionals. I'm your host, Bill Calkins, and although this episode is focused on one crop, we actually get into quite a bit, from an early spring outlook and consumer trends to retail garden center tips and strategies to sell premium products. My guest is Lorentina McKoy, the North American sales and product rep for Suntory Flowers, and she joined me to talk about Princettia, the unique poinsettia collection that many of you are familiar with as a product, but might not have grown yet or are on the lookout for more in-depth production advice. Princettia is an interspecific poinsettia hybrid that looks different than our traditional holiday poinsettias because it's bred to be different. This opens up some unique uses and retail specs, and also requires some production nuances. Because breeding on Princettia is quite active, a whole range of new colors and patterns has come to market in the past couple years, as well as a new sub-series with a more vigorous habit, aptly named Queen. In this episode, Lorentina offers tips and tricks to produce Princettias to their full potential, some ways she's seen them marketed and sold around the world, why the fact that they're a true family of genetics is important, and much more. You'll want to listen all the way to the end because we close with some other top picks in the Suntory range of new varieties for 2026. Before we get started, let me run through Lorentina's bio because it'll give you some insight into why I was so excited to hear what she had to say about Princettia. Lorentina was born and raised in Central Texas, north of Austin, and currently lives in Brenham, Texas, home of world-famous and really delicious Bluebell ice cream. She holds a BS in horticulture from Texas A&M University and started in the industry in early 2013 as quality control at a large woody ornamental nursery in South Texas. Lorentina moved up to propagation foreman and then on to be the propagation supervisor at the nursery. At the end of 2014, she started working in production at a very large greenhouse producer in Texas and was eventually running production planning, hard goods, recycling, and even assisted in propagation while they were looking for a section grower. In October 2018, Lorentina joined Suntory Flowers as the North American sales and product representative, covering all of North America, including Canada, working with both box and independent retailers, creating programs, managing technical support for growers, retailers, and brokers. She also helps coordinate product development for North America with Suntory's R&D team, is the stock farm liaison, and trial coordinator for all confidential and public trials. Lorentina wears many hats. She has plenty of experience in greenhouse production and breeder, grower, retailer strategy, and brings all of that to the table to talk Princettia with me today. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Lorentina, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be on.
Our topic is Princettia, but before we jump right into that, I'm kind of interested what's going on this spring down south because you're in Texas, and as we've been talking about, it's a lot warmer than it is up here in Cleveland. You guys have already started spring. What are you seeing out there? Any trends or anything going on product-wise that you think folks would be interested in?
Yeah, I think especially down here in the South, we kind of had a slow start. I think a lot of that was due to kind of like a false spring that we had a little bit, and then we got back down into freezing temperatures for about a week, and so it got everybody excited and then not excited again, and then now the weather really has broke down here. As far as I know, and people I'm talking to, the brokers, retailers all around the country, especially down here, Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, those kind of areas, I'm sure in California as well. It seems like it's a little bit slow, but everybody's been pretty packed. You know, those kind of fluctuations in weather, it makes it hard for the retailers to figure out how they need to keep their tables stocked. But no, I think it's panning out to be a pretty good year. Trends-wise, I think what I've been seeing a lot of, just both at the growers on the floor in the greenhouses and also at retailers, is like combination pots, it seems like, in the past couple of years also. just a lot more than you kind of used to see. I think maybe some of that, and I feel like I'm a little bit of an odd man out in my generation as far as I actually do like to grow, but I know a lot of my generation, and especially younger, kind of like that instant gratification that the combination pots, you know, give to them, or like a really nice, like big deco pot, you know, that they can just instantly take home from the retailer and put it onto their porch. So that's what I'm really seeing a lot of. And I know just with different shows and talking to a lot of the box stores, it seems to be a big focus for them as well, as far as what their demographics are wanting.
And it kind of makes sense if we talked a few years ago about the houseplant trend and people getting into houseplants. Well, those usually are, when you buy them, they're ready to go. So, you know, you're not buying a 4-inch houseplant or a 3-inch houseplant and watching it grow over the course of years. You're buying something that's an instant decoration. Yeah. So if those folks are coming into garden centers now, have houses, are looking for flowers and garden plants, I know, just thinking about it as we speak, it would make sense that finding something that's ready to pick up an instant decoration would be popular.
Yeah, and I think you used to see just a lot of kind of like Petunia, Calibracorna, Verbena, like a lot of those kind of, I think we're all familiar with that kind of combination, but it seems like the past couple of years, I've seen a lot more innovative combinations, you know, like throwing in a croton or, you know, just something totally different. I saw a chlorophytum spider plant with like some begonias and stuff in a hanging basket, you know.
That's cool.
Like, oh, okay. Like it's just stuff that maybe you know, we wouldn't see in the past. So I think they're getting a little more creative on what they're putting together, and on top of that, you can charge a little bit more of a premium for that kind of item too. So it's good for everybody, I think.
Exactly. You could put a tropical in the middle of that combo too.
Yeah, we position our mandavillas for that quite often.
That's what I was thinking about. I did it last year with some of the samples that I got from Suntory, and it made things, it gave height and flower, and it's actually a lot of fun, and everybody commented on it on my patio. So
awesome.
I totally was setting you up for that right there. We're in sync.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I like hearing about the trends. I like hearing about a different market that I'm familiar with. Certainly a huge market for our industry. So I appreciate that info. I don't know. Why don't we jump into Princettia? I've been thinking a lot about it since we talked last week, getting prepared for this podcast, and it is an interesting story. It's a plant that, I don't know, you could write a soap opera about how that plant's come to market over the last 13 years. I think we agreed 2012 is the first time we kind of heard about Princettia. We're not going to get into detail on that because I think that the exciting thing about Suntory having this product in your portfolio is a lot of what you guys can do for the exposure of this plant. And I know the breeding is continuous, and we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. Let's start there with what's new, because folks are probably familiar with Princettia as a plant. We definitely want to get into a refresher on how you grow it, the differences between Princettia and other poinsettias. But I think what's exciting to me is that it is ongoing breeding and there are new products coming to market. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the breeder of the plant, I guess where the plant comes from, and then what's new, what's been exciting in the last couple of years?
As you mentioned, it is a very, very active breeding focus for us at Suntory. It's definitely one of the top brands that we're focused on, and then just kind of that we have a lot of traction with. I did speak with the breeders, so all the breeding of this is done in Australia. Andrew Bernowitz is the breeder, and I asked him how long he had been actively breeding in this category, and he told me, "Don't make me feel old." And he said his first hybrids were in 1997.
Oh wow, okay.
So even though in Japan the Princettias came to market 2009, but of course in Europe and North America we didn't see those in 2012, as you mentioned, and you kind of had remembered back then when they were coming to the market. So even before coming to the market, he's been really actively breeding in this category for quite some time, I guess almost 30 years, just shy of 30 years, if I do my math correctly. With that and where it's bred, there's a lot of benefits that come with that. And several of our other brands and Top Focus come out of his breeding facility as well. Last year was actually a really big year for us in introductions. And I might even say like the largest introduction year as far as quantity of introductions that we had ever had. We introduced about 6 new varieties. 3 of those were in the original Princettia category. So that's kind of the more compact, the ones that people really know, that those were the first ones to market. And then the other 3 were in our slightly larger subseries that we call Princettia Queen. In Europe, they call that MIDI. Same thing, just 2 different names for the 2 different markets. You know, these breeding companies, we like to do that a lot to
Cyclamen are mini, midi, maxi. They've like a million different subcategories. We've had to learn those at just going to spring trials over the years. Dahlia's kind of the same way with all these sort of subsets. So I don't think it's foreign to most growers, but I like Queen. That makes sense. Bigger than a princess.
That was kind of, exactly. Yeah, playing off the whole Princettia princess thing.
Yep.
So in the compact varieties, you know, we had a red for a while, but I would say that red was kind of more cranberry in that regard. So not that like super nice, like Christmas scarlet red that everybody kind of has in their head for a poinsettia. So last year we introduced a new red we called Pure Red. So it is that beautiful, like kind of Christmas red color, but it also has a red cyathea. So that's where that pure red comes from. Now, of course, once that cyathea falls off, you wouldn't really know the difference on whether it was yellow or red, but it's really cool once it's opened. And then we also had 2 novelty types that we introduced. So Sparkling Rouge and Sparkling Rosé. Sparkling Rouge like really kind of took the growers by storm. Even though it's a pattern that's familiar to people, the coloration is different. It's a really nice, like dark hot pink base color with like a light pink kind of speckled variegation.
Okay.
So it's just really eye-catching. I like to think Princettia is kind of a novelty in itself of a series. So this, I was kind of saying to my pitch, if you will, during all the trials, was like, it's a novelty within a novelty category. But it's been really nice. People really took to that one strongly. So that was a really good introduction for us. And just something exciting, because really to date, we hadn't had anything other than just straight colors, which the colors we have are very vibrant and different from other series that you see, but we hadn't had any kind of variegation or pattern types. And then in the Queen category, we also introduced 3. For a long time, the Princettia Queen Pink was all we had within that category. And it did pretty successful on its own. It's a pretty electric hot pink color. It's got kind of a white edging on it as well, so it really makes the pink pop. But last year we introduced 3 more to accompany it. So we have the Princettia Queen Rose Punch, Princettia Queen Shell Pink, and Princettia Queen Hot Pink.
So all kind of pink tones, different
I would say that's really, the pink is kind of where it all started. I think Princettia is known for having some of the best pinks, but then also our pure white is still the whitest white on the market. So it really is like paper white, and that's a good segue. So for 2026, we have Queen Pure White that we'll be introducing, which I think has been the most exciting for us as the breeding company, but also it's something that the growers and retailers have really been asking for. They love that pure white color, but sometimes they just can't get the size quite to what they need to use it for. So it's limited the pure white in the regular series a little bit more. So yeah, we're super excited about that introduction for 26.
That's cool. And it's fun to, it's obviously fun for you guys as a breeding company to have new, exciting varieties to talk about and to showcase. And it oftentimes brings attention back to a series, gives you a new opportunity to talk to growers. But for growers and consumers, it's all new and it's super exciting. I think to see, I like the novelty within a novelty, and I can completely see how those speckled colors would be exciting, especially to consumers. And we were talking about the younger consumers, which aren't even that young anymore. And certainly coming into the garden center is a huge demographic that's becoming very, very significant to us as an industry, and seeing some of those unique novelties, I think, is what's gonna keep them excited and keep them coming back in to look for more. So it's fun to hear.
Absolutely. And we've seen that, a lot of like interior landscape architects, stuff like that, like to use the pinks and the brighter colors. I think, especially depending on, where they're decorating, if it's kind of more of a more modern, like high scale type area and stuff. So that's been pretty cool to see. I know that Disney has used the Princettias. Specifically in Florida, I think it's one of the only places you can plant poinsettias in the ground. And
yeah.
And that's not just specific to Princettia. That's, all of them. But seeing over the years, Disney's like planted them in front of like the Polynesian Center, different things. So it's just really cool to see the different uses and how, creative people can get.
And I wanted to start with the new, because I think it's exciting, but we do need to talk about the plant and why a Princettia is different than a poinsettia that folks are used to. When we talked, you called it poinsettia's tropical cousin, which I've been thinking about, because that's a funny term, but I think I'll be interested in why you call it that. And also maybe the use, I guess, as you were just talking about the differences between the original, more compact, and then the queen. What can you tell us about the use case for those two different sizes?
I do often refer to Princettia as the kind of tropical cousin. That's mostly because of, like, one, the exceptional heat tolerance they have compared to other varieties. And I know a lot of the breeding has come a long way, just, with everyone, not just our stuff, but typically you wouldn't think of a poinsettia being able to handle quite a bit of heat. Yeah, and I think anybody who's really seen Princettia, they know it looks different. So I know, like, in the industry, everybody refers to these as the euphorbia types, which has always kind of made me giggle. And I think maybe because I am a plant person, because all poinsettias are euphorbias.
Right.
And so the fact that we've kind of termed these the euphorbia types has always, I guess it's like a plant geek thing, right? Like, it just makes me giggle. But they are different because they are hybrid. They are crossed with Euphorbia cornastra. So that's part of what helps it be set apart. So a little bit different look than your more traditional. And then I think that's where a lot of the colors also come out of. So just slightly different hues of the more traditional colors.
If you look at a Princettia, it looks different. Can you describe, I guess, for folks listening, it'd be easy if we had an image right in front of us, but when you look at a Princettia, the bracts look different, right? I mean, they're like small, a little bit smaller or thinner. I don't know. Can you describe how you, like, what you see when you look at it versus a traditional red Christmas poinsettia?
Yeah, so visually speaking, the biggest difference is the bract size and then the shape. So the bracts are a little bit smaller. Sometimes, depending on cultural things used, they can be really tiny, which isn't the goal. That's not what you want. But yeah, they are smaller. They're slightly, I don't want to say stacked, because it's not like a multi-type thing. It's not like a rose, where you have a bunch on top of each other, but the shape is a little bit different. And then the bract itself is a little more narrowed versus like the really large, big red bract that you see kind of on that more traditional. But because even though the bracts are smaller, you're not losing any kind of color coverage, because where maybe a traditional would have, let's say, 5 to 6, sets of red bracts. I'm going to call them flowers for lack of a better term. But, and so you get a lot of color coverage there. While on Princettia, you'd have like 10 to 12 maybe, depending on the size of the pot. So it's not that you're losing color coverage, it's just kind of in a different form. And then, of course, just the branching and compactness is a little bit different than other types. Visually, those are like the biggest differences.
Okay. No, that makes sense. I think that explains it.
Yeah, it is. You're right. It is kind of hard, not having like a photo right in front of you to really.
Because I could walk up to a bench and say, those are Princettias. I mean, they are very visibly different. It's good for the listeners to understand that without a photo. And then the queen and the original. Why did the breeder want to take on, working toward that queen size? What was the goal of that?
A lot of it is just as far as like what your production is and what size. So probably most of the listeners here know like your most like kind of bread and butter size is going to be like that 6-inch kind of poinsettia pot, even they call it. The normal Princettia, the original Princettia, like fits into that perfectly. Like you really naturally it fits into that category. Even like 4-inch production as well. But in a lot of areas, it won't size up even into like an 8-inch, which is also a little bit more common size. And then when you start talking about like the tricolor combinations, deco pots, all the kind of extra stuff, queens are not as vigorous as like some of the other stuff on the market that a lot of us are familiar with. But they are more vigorous than the regular Princettia type. And so we call it kind of a medium. Like we don't want to give the impression that it's, you know, really giant and it's going to fill out a 12-inch or anything. And I think that those varieties do exist. That's just not where we're at. The queens kind of fit that category.
No, that makes complete sense because you do want a product for that 8-inch and larger market with the unique colors and attributes of Princettia, and now you've got it with the queens. I get it, and it makes sense that the breeder would go after that as well.
Yeah, and the queens do have a slightly larger bract expansion, so the bracts are a little bit wider.
Okay.
It still has that same Princettia look. It's just like proportionately larger in all categories, if that makes sense.
No, that makes complete sense. I mean, you've already mentioned the traditional big red Christmas poinsettia that everybody knows and probably loves, maybe. You know, depends on the grower. Depends on who you talk to. But everyone grows them.
Consumer loves it. That's really important, right?
But I guess using traditional poinsettia production as a baseline, what differences should growers be aware of? We're talking a little bit more production and culture now. When making production plans for Princettia, you might be producing them for, you know, earlier in the season, a different season. But when you're laying out a production timeline, to imagine, especially with the original series, with that compactness, that scheduling differences to hit market windows is going to be a little bit different. So if a grower knows poinsettia production inside and out, been growing them for years, what are the key differences to keep in mind if you're moving some Princettia into your product mix?
If a grower knows poinsettias kind of through and through and like the general knowledge of pinching, lighting, all those things, the two main differences for production on Princettia, and I think you mentioned it several times before for me even, is the natural compactness. They are bred to be that way and to kind of self-branch. So we do not recommend PGRs really at all. I think the only place I've ever said, yeah, you should probably put something on that is like Homestead down in South Florida. But I think that's, you know, they're kind of that case with all plants. They just grow a little bit differently, but that's probably the most vigorous I've ever seen Princettias grow is down in like Homestead area.
Okay.
The other thing really is the temperature requirement. That's kind of where that tropical cousin thing comes into play. Princettias do like it warmer. In my experience, like most of the other varieties of poinsettias, they're happiest at a daily average temp of like 60 to 65. Of course, there's plenty of places that grow them warmer than that. I think just, you know, ideal situation, right? If we're talking about, and that's Fahrenheit. Whereas Princettia is a lot happier at like 68 to 75. Even, I think in our catalog, we even say 65 to 80. So they truly do like it pretty warm. Princettias tend to really, really flourish in the southern markets. Not saying that the northern growers don't grow them, and they do. I mean, Lucas does some of the most beautiful crops there in the Northeast, but they tend to be used a lot more in the South because you have some growers that, you know, maybe they can't cool their houses down quite as much down to that 60 mark. We were talking before we started this, it's April 17th. And I know down here in Southeast Texas, we've already been getting up to the 90s. So trying, you know, fast forward to July, August timeframe, it's even warmer. So I think that's really where we've kind of fit in. And then it doesn't hate being colder. It's just going to be slower. So if you have time, you know, and it's cooler, then it's still going to grow.
In terms of lighting, nutrition, all those kind of things, it's similar to other
Yeah, I
poinsettias.
mean, the compact series is a 7-week response time. We say the queens is 8. I've seen other growers tell me it's closer to 7.5, but
Okay.
I think you're splitting hairs at that point. So
Yeah.
you might have to go either which way. As far as lighting, soil, the kind of things that it likes, it's pretty similar. It's easy to grow. I mean, if you know poinsettias, like, you're going to be successful with Princettia.
So now that we know what makes Princettia different and that you have exciting new introductions and breeding going on, think about this plant and hearing about it over the years, it's really been about how it can add to your sales, right? Like, it's that retail message. It was always strong on a retail message. I know you guys talk a lot about that. I also know that because you're Suntory, you probably have a huge global presence with Princettia. You've already referenced the production in Japan starting earlier even than it was here in the States and in Europe. What about some creative retail ideas or any sort of retail advice that you guys give growers and wholesalers at shipping it out to retail, or even retailers who want to make a big deal about Princettia? I'm interested in how it's sold around the world as well. Share some retail tips and tricks that you guys have picked up over the years, or even just ones that you think growers ought to give a try.
Princettia is definitely a premium product, and I think that's how retailers should be doing it. It's a more premium royalty, but then you can get a higher price, right, at retail for upselling it with a deco pot drop-in, or I've even seen where they put called Ting Ting, in case anybody didn't know. That's what the spiral glittery branches are in the middle of holiday plants. So even stuff like that, just like a really nice pot, adding some organza, that kind of thing. Over the years, I have seen some really beautiful like tabletop deco pots of like the red and white. They'll add in some like gold or silver organza that kind of spills out of the side. Something really simple, but also, kind of making it that premium product. I've seen some really nice tricolor combinations, but also specific to Princettia, because we have so many different colors of pink and they are a true family. So they're all kind of sports mutants off each other. So that means that they're going to time the same, they'll behave all the same. A lot of really awesome like monochromatic combinations. So like the light pink, the hot pink, the dark pink all together, or maybe kind of like an ombre type situation of like the white to the dark pink. So I think that's been really cool just to see how creative people have gotten. A couple of shout outs here, if you will.
Yeah.
I know the gift shop at Longwood Gardens every year does such a great job. They'll use mini Princettias and they'll mix it in with like some cute foliage and like some kind of little like rock type thing in like a really nice clay pot.
Okay.
I think those are always really exciting to see, just kind of how they're putting it together.
Like a shallower clay pot, like a tabletop
both.
kind of.
I've seen more like a shallow kind of bowl. They've done some like taller type clay pots, like maybe something you'd put like a pothos in.
Okay.
Or something like that. So they've done a really good job. That's been really interesting. I know Oliver at Widener's has done some Princettia pure white trees.
Cool.
And those were pretty awesome. Yeah, to see, just because that white is so striking, to see it in that tree form. And then I know White Flower Farm online used to do like a direct to consumer box, and they would have, the order was 3 pure white Princettias and like these really awesome like glass gold like orbs.
Cool.
And so it was meant to be like a table scape. So like I think people have really like taken that whole premium thing and run with it. So we're always really excited to see that kind of stuff. And we always try to position to the box stores, hey, this is a premium item, like this isn't your everyday red cover, $4.95 or whatever. So it's been really cool to see. And then globally, I think just in general, Europe always does a really good job on like tags and like the big story tags and matching up really like high quality pot cover with the color of the brack to coordinate it really well. They have a really cool like picture tag that they use. It's a tiara, like Princettia tiara, and then it's like a frog in the middle. So like, you kiss a prince type thing. So that I just like really fun stuff. And then Japan, they were really the first ones to introduce it. And then they also too, they always do such a great job merchandising. The few times I've been over to Japan and we've walked through retailers and looking at the way that they really like tell the whole story. With plants, not just poinsettias, but with plants in general. It's just really elegant, and the branding is really nice. So they do a really good job globally.
The upscaling of the packaging to really command that premium price by giving premium value is certainly something that we can learn more about here in the States. We're getting better. I mean, for sure. And you mentioned like Longwood, like it doesn't surprise me that they do really, really cool things. Oliver, I mean, just innovative, always looking to add value and showcase a cool plant in a cool package. It occurred to me, this is the reason why I asked about, is it in a shallower container, is just the more compactness of the plant would lend itself to that. A real, like when you said tabletop, I mean, it would be tough to put a big red poinsettia in the middle of the kitchen table. You couldn't see the person on the other side. But with a Princettia, you totally could do that.
Yeah, we've seen, and I know from like production days and stuff, being on the other side of the coin with all of the box stores or retailers, they always want that. But then you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the best variety to do that with? Because like you said, sometimes they're vigorous, right? Just in general, the plant typically is vigorous. And you don't want to be like wading through the jungle trying to tell grandma hello on the other side of the table at Christmas dinner.
True. Before we wrap up, have we missed anything on Princettia? Is there anything else that, like, I feel like we almost forgot to mention that it was a true family, but you did. And I think that's a really important part of the messaging is in the breeding and the fact that they are true family type breeding where you could schedule them all and they would all perform exactly the same, grow the same. The one's not going to take over if you do a tricolor combo. Is there anything else about Princettia that you wanna mention before I jump into other Suntory products while I got you on the hook?
Really, when I'm talking to growers, of course, your message from retailer to grower to consumer is always a little bit different. But especially when I'm talking to growers, I really kind of drive home that family aspect because there are a lot of series out there that they're kind of just more of a collection versus a true family. We're not the only ones that have like a true family. There's other breeders that do, but specifically with the Princettias, it's really nice because you can do a lot of like row run, and with like labor issues and stuff, as we've all been hearing about in the industry, that's really important that you don't have to hunt back, for those orders to get stuff that's really all the same. And then two, just the creative aspect, like I mentioned before, just you can kind of take all the queens and then all the compacts and just kind of mix and match however you want, and they're all going to behave the same. So that's fairly unique. You don't always get that creative freedom when it comes to poinsettias.
Good for growers to understand that, and for retailers to maybe even request it or work with their wholesale suppliers to get those kind of interesting creative mixes in, because that is what will get consumers excited about plants in general. Right. Is that creativity. All right. While I got you, let's talk about a couple of your other favorite new Suntory introductions. Spring trials a few weeks ago. We had a great stop at Suntory, saw some fun, unexpected things and more expected things. I know that, we certainly knew that we were not going to get through the Suntory space without seeing Million Bells, Surfinias, Sun Parasols, the whole Mandevilla program and Diplodenia program you guys have is amazing. What are some of the biggest 2026 intros in your opinion?
I think for us, equally as Princettia is a pretty active breeding category, so is our Mandevilla and Diplodenia. So Sun Parasol and Sundinia is a pretty important category for Suntory. I actually am most excited about the new Sun Parasol Fired Up Coral. I saw that thing in trials probably about 5 years ago when we were walking through the fields, and I was like, man, that thing just screams like poolside tropical, right? Like you just see it and you're like, oh, okay, like instant happiness, right? Like
Mhm.
you want to be like in a pool, just like sipping a
Yeah.
Mai Tai, right? So I'm really excited about that. And I think just the uniqueness of it, and then that fired up category really added a new use, I think, for Mandevilla. Mandevilla and Diplodonia are so great on their own. You know, they're pretty resilient plants, but a lot of times you see them, it's like, here's a pot, here's a trellis. You know,
Exactly.
and
Right.
fired up, I think, is so unique, just not just in its looks, but also just in its uses. And we've really been pushing hard on that one. You know, it's a great thriller, like a true combo thriller, centerpiece, focal point, and different things. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that coral, and the color is just really hard to pass up. You mentioned it earlier about just that impulse of with the consumer, and it's hard to walk by that plant when it's in full bloom and not like want to pick one up and take one home.
Definitely. No, we loved it too. I think, was it at TPIE as well?
Yes.
Because I know when we walked into the space at Spring Trials, Chris was like, "Oh my gosh, we saw these at TPIE.
Yeah.
They were absolutely stunning." He couldn't wait to show it off to those of us who weren't there.
And of course, Surfinia is what started Suntory Flowers for at the beginning. And so that's still a very active breeding category. It's kind of that legacy that we have. In the past few years, we have this huge portfolio of Surfinias, and they're kind of all different grow habits and shapes and sizes and blooms. And so really this past few years, we've navigating like, okay, how do we do like a sub-series and kind of classify them? And so we've been focusing pretty heavily on what we call the Heavenly series, and I really call that like the grower friendly. It's a more medium semi-trailing mounding with a medium flower. And so new for 26, which I was told by a lot of people, apparently 2026 is the year of the pink petunia. We have a new Surfinia Heavenly Cashmere Pink, which I know it's hard to get excited about a pink petunia, but the Surfinia category as a whole has really been lacking like a good solid pink. I think it's one of those core colors, you know, when you talk about petunias. The crazy petunias are awesome, you know, from Westhoff, and just those patterns and stuff. But I think still a lot of people use those like core colors, white, red, purple, pink. And so it's a really exciting introduction for us, just because we finally have one to fill that void in our category. But also too, just it's kind of like iridescent almost when you look at it. And the more you look at it, you're like, oh, it's kind of like pearl pink. It's really nice. It stays really full in the center, and it matches well with other stuff. So combinations, like we talked about at the very beginning, it does really well in combo pots. So I would say those two are probably the most exciting. And I know you mentioned some not so expected types. So we do have verbenas, and I think that might be what you're talking about.
That was. We were surprised to see it. Tell us the story of why you guys have new verbenas, because it's cool. It's a good story.
Yeah. So Tamare and Tapian have been around for a while. Those are the two categories of verbena that we have. But we haven't had anything new in quite some time in those categories. But we did get a brand new breeder. He's like 26 years old. He's super excited, and he's kind of been put in charge of verbena. So he's got a lot of really awesome ideas and just what he wants to do and kind of take the category. So moving on, coming down the pipeline in those two, both the like Minariensis that we kind of know, and then the Tapian more landscape style, like we'll be seeing some like pretty cool stuff.
That's awesome.
Pipeline, yeah.
Good.
And his name's Tepe, so it's even better. It kind of just fits in.
That is funny. That's funny. No one told us that at Spring Trials. So
yes.
That's really cool. We were excited to see that. I mean, verbena's a mainstay. It's just a mainstay vegetative annual, and to hear new breeding coming from Suntory, I think is exciting, because people do know those series, and new breeding is coming on crops that we know about, because you know that they're not just breeding for fun, breeding for a particular reason.
Right.
And it's usually to make life easier for growers or bring new attributes for consumers. So, well, thank you so much. I mean, it's fun to talk about a plant like Princettia that I think has got a lot of, been reinvigorated with a lot of the new introductions. Like you said, it was a huge year last year. And I expect that with ongoing breeding, we'll continue to hear about more and more. And I like to hear your take on what's happening so far this spring. That's always exciting. And then a look ahead to 2026 with the new varieties. Suntory's never sitting still. I always see press releases come through, and whether it's like new crazy high-tech facilities being built, new emphasis being put into breeding, new varieties, new excitement, especially in the tropicals category that's just been absolutely booming. I know we can always expect that from you guys. So it was really fun to talk. If listeners have any questions or want to reach out or learn more, where should they go for information?
Yeah, so the best central place to go for information is suntoryflowers.com. We have anything from cultural info, sourcing, marketing materials, photos, all kinds of stuff on the website. Pretty clearly labeled, so hopefully the navigation is not too complicated.
Cool.
And if there's ever any questions, there's 3 of us in the North American market. We all do, we wear a lot of different hats, I guess, if you will. We have our respective jobs, but we really do truly work as a team. But yeah, if there's any other questions, they can always reach out to myself, Delilah Onifray, who's our marketing director for North America, and then TJ Higgins, who's our North American GM.
Cool. Well, I appreciate that. You guys do great work. Lorentina, thank you so much. I will put links to that information in the show notes. And once again, I really do appreciate your willingness to jump on the podcast in the middle of crazy season. I'm sure for you guys, especially where you're at in Texas, things are moving quick. I'm sure we'll catch up soon. Again, thank you so much. On behalf of Lorentina and the rest of the Suntory Flowers team, thanks for listening and have a great spring.